All right. So, our first topic is Introduction to WordPress. If you ask anyone about what exactly WordPress is, I think the first thing which would come into anyone's mind is that WordPress is a CMS. What is CMS? It stands for Content Management System. Okay, so what exactly is a content management system? So, content management system is yes a system, but it's a software application that is actually used to create, manage, and modify the content on a website. Now, it actually allows you to build a full-fledged website without actually having to write a single piece of code. I mean, not to sound very ancient, but then when we started typing out, developing code for the website and designing website, I remember when we used to open the code and start writing code from the scratch. Now, with what you have called as what you see is what you get kind of editor, you literally can just drag, drop, and start creating your entire website. You can add, modify, delete without even actually having to edit a single line of code. Now, when I say content, you can actually add in your images, your text, your graph, your videos, just about anything onto your website. Whatever a website requires, you can actually build it using a CMS. Now, yes, we will be talking about WordPress, which is the most common CMS tool which is actually available. But apart from WordPress, what are the other CMS tools that you actually have? Some popular ones are like Joomla, Drupal, Magento, Squarespace, Wix, etc. There's a lot of content management systems that's actually available. Now, what kind of websites can you build using CMS? Well, not just the normal website, not just the normal blog website that you're looking at, right? From a simple static website that's basically like a brochure, a glorified brochure, basically, a website with your about us and your services, products, contact. Apart from just a static website, to blogs, you can create full-fledged e-commerce stores, you can create online courses website, you can create a website for memberships, for your portfolios, forums, just about anything. Now, that is the power behind CMS, and that is one reason WordPress is so powerful as well. Apart from just creating the normal websites, you can go ahead and create full-fledged e-commerce websites and this website which I just mentioned. Now, another popular thing which you hear about when you talk about WordPress is about pages and posts. Now, pages, yes, is obviously the different pages that you actually create in a website. Post is nothing but your blog posts, what articles that you keep writing. All that comes under post, and you can do much more. Like I've just mentioned about the e-commerce, about the online courses, all those can be done using this particular WordPress system. Now, moving on, apart from the pages and posts, the next thing what you typically hear is about the themes and plugins. Now, themes are just like your skin of a particular website, the front end, the colors that you actually see, the images, the fonts, the layouts, all these actually constitute the themes. You can actually, there's a huge repository of themes that is actually available on the WordPress site. I think currently there's well about 7,000 odd themes that is actually available, which you can use free of cost. Now, the next huge thing about WordPress when it comes to WordPress is basically what is popularly called as the plugins. Now, plugins are small or rather softwares which actually enhances the functionality of your WordPress website. Now, for example, I did mention if you're installing a basic website, you can create a very basic website, like I said, which having just the about us, the services, the products, all those would fall under a basic static website. And when I did mention to you about the e-commerce website, your online forums, or maybe you want to create a membership site. Now, how do you convert a basic website, a basic WordPress website into a complex website which actually performs e-commerce? That's all done with the help of what is called as plugins. Now, for an e-commerce store, you have a plugin called WooCommerce. Now, if you want to actually create a membership site, you have different kinds of plugins like your MemberPress or BuddyPress. And if you want to create an online, online courses. I mean, my own course is an online course right now. So if I want to create a system like this to create online systems and online courses, what plugin do I use? There are plugins called Lifter LMS, or there's even a plugin called LearnDash. Now, these are all plugins which actually enhances the entire functionality of a particular website. Now, in a similar manner, like I said, you have even for the membership sites, message boards, there are a whole lot of plugins. There's a common phrase in the WordPress community that's it's a plugin for everything. So even if you want to create a header and footer, there's a header and footer plugin. So like I said, and again, going back to the WordPress website, you have a repository of almost well above 55, I think 55 or even 57,000 plugins at this point of time, which you can actually use from. Now, moving on. Now, if you check a typical WordPress website layout would actually have a header and a footer. Now, header, yes, is basically the topmost portion of your website. Now, if you have seen, you would know that a header comprises of basically the logo, your menus, and at times it has a call to action button as well, maybe somewhere on the right hand corner, or it's typically on the right hand corner, or instead of the call to action button, you may even have a search icon over there. You probably would have seen it a lot of times, a small little search icon there in the right hand side corner. So all these fall under the header section of your website. Now, on the flip side, you have a footer, which is right at the bottom of your website. The footer again would have maybe some sub menus which you might have, which is not as important as the top menus which you have in the header. You may have some sub menus in the footer. Apart from the sub menus, you may also have, let's say, the address, or maybe a contact form, or maybe a Google map. That's another common thing. Another common thing, any guesses? The social media icons. A lot of people have all the social media icons as well in the footer. And of course, a footer is not complete without your copyright statement as well. So that also appears there. So even if you want to have your disclaimers or your disclosures, your privacy policy, your feedback, all those, even if you're having a sitemap.xml that you would probably include for your search engine, that also everything can actually fall under the footer. Now, I did mention in the header and the footer, we are including menus. So menus is another important feature which will also be taken care of within the WordPress dashboard. That when we come to it, you can start customizing your menus. You can tell which menu is there for the header, which menu has to go in for the footer as well. Now, after the menus, we come to what is called the content area. Now you're clear about where the header is, you're clear about where the footer is. So that whatever comes in between the topmost header and the bottom footer is basically your content area. And that is where you have all your, whether your text, your images, your forms, your maps, your whatever you actually include, everything is done within the content area. So this is, and apart from the content area, you also have, or sometimes you have a sidebar as well. Now sidebar is either on the right hand side or on the left hand side of the website. You can do away with the sidebar also. Some people, for example, on my own website, the bloggersbloom.com, if you see many of my articles, the blog article, I don't have a sidebar. For all you know, I might include a sidebar after the end of this course, but nevertheless, you can include a sidebar as well, and along with your content. Now, this is as far as a rough idea. This gives you a clear idea of what basically WordPress is. Now, someone who's actually entering WordPress for the first time, maybe a complete newbie, maybe a little confused as to what is WordPress, which is the WordPress default website, because a typical, I mean, it's a general notion that the moment you go onto a website, you type a .com. So I would like to just bring in talk about the differences between the WordPress.org and WordPress.com. The official site is WordPress.org. Now, the main difference between the WordPress.com and the WordPress.org is basically the hosting of your website. Like I've mentioned, the WordPress.org, you buy your own domain, you buy your own hosting, and you host your website. Whereas for those who would like to start something new without actually investing in the hosting and without actually investing in the domain, you can go in for a WordPress.com. Now, like I just mentioned over here, the WordPress.com, they take care of all the hosting and the domain for you. However, WordPress.com, your site URL will look like a subdomain. Like for example, if your domain name is, this for an example, my domain name. So your domain name will be my domain name dot WordPress.com. So that is like a subdomain. So you don't get your own domain name when you're taking a free package with WordPress.com. Apart from which, since WordPress is giving you a free website, they'd obviously like to monetize it for themselves. So they display ads and their own branding on this as well. So what does this mean? You cannot remove these ads and branding. Even if you wanted a website without displaying any ads, you can't do anything about it. It's going to be displayed. So you cannot remove that. The next thing, you have a limited space of about 3 GB space. You can't monetize your blog. Now that's a big disadvantage for those who'd like to start creating a blog and start making money out of it. You really cannot monetize it. Then the next most important, you can't have complex websites by including plugins. I just spoke about the plugins, the various plugins that you can install. Whatever plugins are actually there, and it goes for the themes as well. Whatever free plugins and themes are actually there on the WordPress.com, that's all you can actually make use of. You really cannot install new themes and plugins, so it limits the functionality of your website. So if you're a complete newbie, you would like to just play around and check how WordPress works, you could, but nevertheless I would still not suggest, because it's like a complete scaled down version of your WordPress website. You do not get to know the complete power and functionalities of your actual WordPress website. So between the two, any day, go in for the WordPress.org. And in any case, I mean, even if you are saying that you have difficulty about hosting a website and installing WordPress, these days, most of the hosting service providers, which we will be covering in the next chapter as well, actually helps you install. They come with auto installers, and you do not have to worry about even downloading the software from WordPress.org and reinstalling it on your website and then running through these setup procedures. None of those is actually required. Everything is taken care by the auto installer, which is actually there in your hosting service provider, which we will definitely be covering in the next chapter. So you won't have to worry about that. So just to summarize, between WordPress.org and WordPress.com, it's always WordPress.com, which you have to go in for. Now, just some few facts which will probably really justify whatever I have been saying all this while. Over 455 million websites are powered by WordPress, which typically says that WordPress has got a 35% share of websites in the world. And the next best is basically Joomla at just 3%. So there's a huge difference between 35 and 3. So you know what kind of market share WordPress is actually holding currently. WordPress, like I mentioned in previously as well, it's not just for blogging. Nearly 28% of all the e-commerce stores go through WooCommerce. I did mention about the plugin which you actually need when you're going to be creating a shopping website, which is called WooCommerce. So 28% of all e-commerce websites that's around there use WooCommerce, and WooCommerce is with WordPress. Again, another stat mentioned over here, 281 new WooCommerce shops appear on an average daily, with 661 WordPress sites also coming up on a daily basis. Now, like I mentioned, WordPress.org offers you almost 57,000 plugins and over 7,500 themes as well. Now, this is all which you could completely use for free without having to pay a penny. Now, just to let you know some of the well-known websites that are using WordPress. I mean, this is maybe a 0.01% of the actual list which is actually there. I've just taken out some of the few big names which is mentioned, something like New York Times, the Forbes, the Vogue magazine, CNN website, eBay, you name it, there's a whole lot. I mean, you have, I think, even Angry Birds, and you have quite a lot of huge names which is actually there. If you go to the WordPress.org, and if you actually, the first tab that you actually see in the WordPress.org website is actually Showcase. If you click on Showcase, you'll get to see the entire list of websites which are actually powered by WordPress. Now, just to entice you and let you know how much you could typically earn from being a WordPress developer. So if you're on an entry level, you could, this is all in INR, Indian rupees. So if you're on entry level, you could probably look at about a 300,000 annual package. For a mid-level, that is anywhere between 2 to 4 years of experience, you could probably be looking at about a 600,000 annual CTC. Experienced developers, anywhere between about 900,000 onwards. You could see right at the bottom, I have basically a small little graph which actually justifies what I've just mentioned. It's from a website called PayScale, where they actually tell you what kind of pays you can actually expect in the market. You could check out that website as well. I'm not endorsing it by any means. I'm just mentioning you could probably check out based on the kind of skill set that you actually have in the country. For example, I've actually taken this with respect to the Indian market scenario. You could always check up how it is for your country and see the kind of pay scale there. And if you're looking at as a freelancer, I mean, once you learn WordPress, you can start freelancing. You can take up projects, and typically a static website, you could charge. I mean, I know there are a lot of ads which keep saying get websites done for as less as, I won't mention the pricing, but nevertheless, static websites, ballpark, you could actually charge anywhere about 10,000 to about 20,000 rupees based on how much whether you're doing the content and the designing and the theme all put together. If you're looking at a little more, maybe an e-commerce website, you could start from about 35,000, 40,000 onwards, and goes on based on the kind of complexities. If you're building an online course website, you can charge even more. Of e-commerce website or a membership website, all based on, again, based on the client and based on the kind of effort that you're actually putting into the development as well. So this is basically what your first chapter actually talks about. The first topic gives you just a gist about what WordPress is. In our next topic, we will discuss about the how you can actually practice WordPress for free. All right, so thank you. We'll meet up in the next chapter now.